Now that I've heard Mo speak, I'm going to get her to coach me on how to make you fall in love with freedom, like she's made you fall in love with profit. So that's my new goal. And I want to tell you a little something about Diana. You know, she talked up here about really being interested in the brain. Well, I'm going to prove a point with that. Jimmy, my husband, and Tony, her husband, love to go fishing. I mean, I think they live to fish, right? So they're on a fishing trip, and Diana and I are trying to figure out, what are we going to go do? We wound up at the Amen Brain Clinic doing brain scans. Not very many people could you call up and say, you know what would be fun? Let's just go get them to scan our brain, and do we really want to know what they find? But yeah, it was awesome. It was really cool. So she does absolutely love the brain. So I want to start by kind of sharing a story with you. We talked a lot about mentors and coaches and collaborations today. And a few years ago, I was struggling. And I was struggling because it seemed like all my friends and all my family were struggling with the fact that I always wanted to achieve more. Has anybody ever had family members or friends who think you're weird and they don't understand who you are and why you do what you do and why do you work so much? And I felt like I got that constantly. And then on the other hand, the people that I was trying to help seemed like I couldn't get them to want more. So I was really, really frustrated. So I reached out to my mentor and coach, Gary Keller, and he said something so profound to me that it changed everything about how I look at achieving and wanting more. And here's what he said: Linda, life is about becoming. And the way that you become is you get up every day and you go see what else it is that you can achieve. Sports teams don't win one Super Bowl and go back to the dugout and say, forget it, it's over. No, they go back out on the practice field and they see what else they can achieve. And I'm going to tell you that changed everything for me. Because how many of you have ever felt bad about, I noticed it today. Several times when we would ask, someone on the stage would ask about wanting more or having more, the volume would go down. It's almost like we're embarrassed. And I don't know if it's, family and friends and life that teaches us, or we get this kind of thought process that wanting more is bad. And I'm going to tell you, it's not bad. John Maxwell says, you cannot be outrageously generous if you're broke. So we have to change. Diana mentioned it earlier. We have to change our mental thoughts around profit and money and the good it can do and all of those things. And I think so much of what holds us back sometimes is what we've been taught about that. So here's the thing. Most of us in this room, definitely myself included, we're not Warren Buffett, we're not Steve Jobs, and we're not Bill Gates, right? But we can have an extraordinary life. And I think if we all just wake up and say, what's my extraordinary life? What do I want that to be? See, if you don't decide what you want, something or somebody else does. If you don't decide what you want, somebody or something else will do it for you. We did a study. We wrote the book Hold, How to Find, Buy, and Rent Houses to Build Wealth. And one of the things that we discovered in this survey was they followed 100 people over their 40-year career. And here's what they discovered. 1 was wealthy, 4 were financially secure, 5 were working because they had to, not because they wanted to, 36 were deceased, and 54 were broke and dependent on their friends and family. Now, 2 things. 1, I think those people didn't decide. They let someone else decide what they wanted. The second thing is, I think if we don't, it's our default key. If we don't wake up and let the world know what we want, then we're going to get a lot of default things happen to us instead of for us, right? So if you don't decide what you want, something or someone else will. So what do you want more of? You know, Diana, you better say profit, right? Mo's still here somewhere. And hopefully when I'm done, you'll say some freedom. But you have to decide that first. Before you can get what you want, we have to decide what it is you want. And it's different for everybody. And nobody gets to decide what it is that you want. It could be, I want more freedom. I'm in that club. I want more money. Mo told us all the great things about loving profit, right? Money is good for the good it can do. And John says you cannot be outrageously generous if you're broke. So money's okay. I want more opportunities. I want more sales. I want more time. I want more relationships. So sometimes it's hard to figure out what we want. Anybody in here ever struggle with what do I want? Maybe you've got a change in your life. Maybe you have wanted something and now you feel like it's changed a little bit. Like, what the heck? I thought I wanted this, but now I don't want this anymore. I want something else, right? So what are some of the ways that we get clues to what we want? So here's what I think. I think that our soul kind of speaks to us. And the way it speaks to us sometimes is a little whisper, right? And I think our energy tells us a lot, whether we're on the right track or we're not on the right track. So my little whisper came when I was 18 years old. I never went to college and didn't know anybody, no one in my family had gone to college. So I thought when you graduated from high school, you got what we called a real job. Because I'd had all those other kind of jobs like Dairy Queen, you know, the Skaggs Alpha Beta, which is a grocery store, Baskin Robbins, Jack in the Box. And I didn't realize it at the time, but those jobs, number one, if I wanted something, you had to have a job. My sister, who is 10 years and 2 days older than me, took me into her home when I was, 16, and I made a promise to her that I will never be a bother to you if you'll just let me come live with you. And I kept that promise. I worked, I helped her, I made my own money. I tried really hard not to be a burden at all. And so when 18 came around, I thought you just go get a real job. So I went to my friend who had worked with at the Dairy Queen. Her husband was a big executive with General Telephone at the time. And she got me a job as a person that routes the repair trucks. Now, I think that's kind of funny right now because you should see me with a map. It's not pretty. Ask my husband. I do pretty bad with GPS because I'll just argue with it and go the other way, right? So I laughed thinking that they thought I would be qualified for that job. But here was when my soul began to speak to me. It began to speak to me when, all of a sudden, you had to be there at 8, you got off at 5, you had 1 hour for lunch, and you had 2 15-minute breaks. It was soul-crushing. And, by the way, they decided how much money you made. At least on my other jobs, I got some tips, right? So this was my soul beginning to say to me, Linda, freedom is going to be super important to you. You have to figure out freedom. Now, sometimes it's not a whisper. Sometimes it's a sledgehammer. And the sledgehammer came about 6 years later. Now, I was married to my husband, not that long, but married a short period of time, and he was in the restaurant and nightclub business. And in Texas, in the late 80s, we had a horrific downturn in our market. It was real estate crashed, oil and gas, and the savings and loan all crashed at the same time. Now, my husband is running a big nightclub in Dallas, and all of a sudden, it's bad. So we have to sell that business for $600,000 less than we owe against it. Now, I'm in my mid-20s. I don't even know what the word economy means, much less is it good or bad. But I knew something was wrong because he was stressed always. And come to find out, bankers call you a lot when you owe them that much money. And he was stressed over the calls that he was having to take. Now, they say under anger is fear. And I was pretty angry because I was pretty fearful. Up until that point, remember, I'd never made more than minimum wage. I didn't go to college. I didn't know how to help him get out of this mess. We were both looking at each other going, I wish there was an adultier adult here, and realizing we are the adultier adult. We have to figure something out. And so it was not a marriage enriching time. I'm going to be honest with you. We've made it 40-something years, but it is just short of a miracle because you don't come home and whisper sweet nothings to each other when you're in that kind of financial crisis. My husband said, I didn't know you could go from a Cadillac to a beat-up Pinto with a dent in the door so fast. It was bad. And the reason things like that are bad, and we call those graduallys and suddenlies, and the reason they're bad is because you don't know where the bottom is. You're free-falling and you have no clue where the bottom is. So we had to think fast. We had to act fast. We had to figure out how to get out of that situation. And so through that process, my husband's bright idea was when he was probably 10 years old, so imagine him getting the story right at 10 and keeping it till he's 30-something to tell me to do it. His mentor told him that if you want to make a lot of money, and in fact, I think he said if you want to get rich, which at this point we were definitely wanting to be rich. He said real estate is the way to do it. So Jimmy, in his bright idea to the solution, decides that the way for us to get rich and get out of this situation would be for me to go sell houses. Now, I'd never even lived in a house that I owned. I didn't know what realtors did, but anything sounded good right now to get out of that situation. So I started in real estate. I made $3,000 gross my first year. Jimmy said, this is really gross because I paid at least $15 for you to make $3. We're going the wrong direction. So we had to think fast. And I'm going to share with you in just a little bit a formula that when we think about it is the formula that helped us get out of this situation. And I'll continue the $600 in debt and my real estate story in a minute. So it's really a simple formula. Who's interested in a simple formula? I don't like complicated. Matter of fact, my philosophy is if things are too complicated, make people break it down until it's simple. If it's too complicated, don't do it. There's lots of risk in complicated. But the truth is, it was simple over complicated, not hard. And the reason I marked out hard is because when we do what's hard in life, our life gets easy. When we do what's easy in life, our life gets hard, and most people get that wrong. They just want to do the easy stuff, and what they don't realize is if you just do the easy stuff, your life is going to be much harder than if you will find the hard things and just do them. So what I want you to do now is, what is the something more you want? Hopefully you've had enough time with Diana and everybody speaking today to really get an idea. And if not, this is your first step when you go home. Spend time away from everybody, whatever you got to do, go figure out what it is you want. So hopefully you have it. Got it? Now I want you to turn to your neighbor real quick and tell your neighbor what it is you want. Real quick, we're not going to spend much time, but 10 seconds. Tell your neighbor what it is you want. You're here at a Moore conference. What do you want? Okay, real quick. You got it? Shh. Everybody got it? Now you've got at least one other person to hold you accountable for what it is that you want. So now that you got it, what is usually the first question when we figure out something we want is? What is the first question we usually ask? How in the world am I going to get that, right? Well, here's the thing. I want you to not ask the how. Get how out of your mind for right now. And the reason I say that is with most entrepreneurs, when you go to how, we procrastinate. It's in the how that causes us to procrastinate. See, most entrepreneurs, the how, they're idea people. The how is like sloughing around in the mud. You just literally get stuck in the how. And so I want you to put how on the back burner. You do have to figure out how. We did have to figure out how to get out of $600,000 worth of debt. But the truth is, that's not where you start, right? And if you're going to make a big life for yourself, then you have to make big commitments. Big lives aren't made on little commitments. They're made on big commitments. I was interviewed last year in the book 10X is Easier Than 2X. How many of you have actually read 10X is Easier Than 2X? I love anything Dan Sullivan writes, and Dr. Benjamin Hardy is my new favorite. His book, Your Future Self Now, is phenomenal. So in the book, what I love about being interviewed in that book is when you tell your own story and you have to look backwards, that's where you see progress. We only see progress looking back in our life. And so when you think about your life, we're always living in the gap, going for what's next. But we really should spend some time looking backwards, because you've probably made some pretty big, strong commitments that have made some pretty big jumps for your life. The problem is we stop doing it. We quit making those big commitments, right? And the truth is, to have a big life, you have to do a lot of scary crap. I'm glad Mo's gone. Is Mo gone? You have to do a lot of scary stuff. And the reason it's scary is it takes courage to make big commitments. I love this from Bonnie Ware's book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying. She says the number one regret that most people have on their deathbed is, and what they say is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. It takes courage. And it sounds like a lot of people don't decide to have that courage, and they die with a regret. And the reason it's scary is because you don't know the how. That's why we don't want to start with how. Because when we get stuck in the how, we can stay there an hour, a week, a month, 2 years, 5 years. We can waste a lot of time being stuck in the how. So we don't want to start there. We don't know the how, but we don't want to start there. And the truth is this: if we only do what we already know in life, see, if we only do the things we already know, then we're only at the most going to 2x our life. If we do what we already know, we're only going to 2x our time. So what is 10x? 10x is bigger, it's easier, it's freer, and it gives you a whole lot more options. So asking how gets you to 2x. But asking who will get your life to a 10x. None of us has enough time to know it all, do it all, or have it all. And that is a terrible thing for people who like to achieve. Because don't you want it all, have it all, do it all? But the truth is, the faster we can get clear about what it is we want. And one of the things that I love about Diana's book, and if you haven't gotten it yet, go get it. There's a place in here where you can actually do an exercise about what becoming means to you. And I think the clearer we can get on that, they become the filter that all of our decisions go through. But when we're not clear, we say yes to a lot of stuff that we really shouldn't even say yes to, that takes us way off the path. So because we don't have enough time to know it all, do it all, and have it all, we have to have shortcuts. Who loves shortcuts? I watch more biohacking videos and habit books than probably anybody on this earth. I'm always looking for a shortcut. Anybody else love that kind of stuff? You know, atomic habits, all the things that I can learn, real quick shortcuts that will help me. So we need shortcuts. So what I'm going to give you is a simple formula to drop all your wants into. From this day forward, what I hope you do is every time you want something, you actually pull out this formula and you drop it in. Okay? So you ready? Are you really ready? Here you go, right fast. Oh, sorry. This is my granddaughter's homework. I don't know how it got in here. I cannot solve this problem. Hopefully she can. Nope, here it is. So here's the formula. We call it R plus V plus VG over T, but here's what it stands for. Value gaps is what you want. So where the word value gaps is, you're going to put what you want today, right? Now, to get that, it's going to take some really key relationships. But to get a key relationship to say yes to opening a door to a relationship with you, you have to be valid. You have to have validity. And here's what I love to say about validity. Everybody has it, nobody thinks they do. But everybody has it. You've got to learn what ways there are to get validity and how to use it. And then the last thing is, are you committed to the time it's going to take to get what you want? Because some things take longer. You know, building wealth takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Some great things are going to take a little more time. So have you really thought about the time it's going to take, number one, to put into it, and number two, for the length of time it's going to take to do it? So I'm going to show you in a little bit how this formula has actually worked out for us so that it'll make a little more sense to you as we go along. First of all, we've identified 8 key relationships, but today we're going to talk about one, the one that I think you should think of first, right? And that is, who has accomplished what I want to accomplish? Who has accomplished what I want to accomplish? So why should you trust me on this formula? What? Absolutely, and I'm going to show you how we've done it. This formula is what helped us get out of $600,000 in debt. And in a minute, I'm going to tell the story to show you how that works. Number 2, we've bought hundreds and hundreds of single-family homes, hence why we wrote the book Hold, How to Find, Buy, and Rent Houses to Build Wealth. We built a top real estate team in Denton, Texas. It sold over 200 homes a year and listed over 200 homes a year with this formula. And then we've built our profit share from over $1 million a year, $16 million accumulative, all following this process. We've also ventured into the nightly rental business. We have 37 vacation rentals in Branson, Missouri, all started with a relationship. Okay? All right, so let's kind of look at it. Here's the other thing. And I don't tell you these names to brag, because to be honest with you, if I can get in a relationship with all these people, and I could give you a whole nother page of these kind of amazing people that we've built relationships with. And if you notice, Diana's my smart friend at the bottom. But the reason I tell you this is once we get those relationships, all you have to do is focus on how to fill their value gaps, their wants. The focus is no longer on what are you going to get from them. It's what am I going to do for them? What am I going to get from them? What am I going to give for them? What do they need that I can help them with? See, my friend Joe Polish says, life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. If you just wake up and come from contribution and giving, everything else will take care of itself. But every one of these 2 pages of relationships, and by the way, I could have done 2 more pages, are all people that by using this formula, we managed to get in a relationship with, and now all we do is focus on how do we add value to their life. And guess what? You'll see in a minute why that works. Diana said it earlier, no one succeeds alone. And I think anybody who's accomplished much on their journey will tell you the one thing that they discovered is nobody succeeds alone. Okay? The right who gets you there faster. The right who will get you there faster. They will lead you to the how. So we don't start with how, we start with who, and the who will lead us to the how. How many of you know this man? Yeah, Tony DeCello. So remember, we were $600,000 in debt. I was only doing $3,000 gross. Jimmy thought it was gross. I thought it was gross. And guess what? It was gross, yes. We went to a seminar that we couldn't afford to be at. And in that seminar was a gentleman up on stage, and he talked that day about making $600,000 gross commission income. Now, by the way, nowadays he helps people make millions in GCI, but back then that was like millions. No one was doing that. Now, Jimmy and I both immediately sat up in our chairs and thought, oh my God, 600,000? That's our magic number. We have got to get with this guy and figure out, how do you make $600,000 in commissions? So on the break, we tackled him. Every break, we tackled him. We went to dinner with him. We went to a movie with him. We rollerbladed with him. Neither one of us had ever had a pair of rollerblades on in our life. My husband says we would have gotten sleeping bags and slept on his floor if he would have let us. And so he was the who that helped us figure out the how. Now, let me ask you this. What do you think might be some of the limiting beliefs we might have when we see this bigger-than-life guy up on the stage doing that kind of production when I've made $3,000 gross? What do you think some of the limiting beliefs might have been around us approaching Tony DeCello? Yes. Oh, imposter syndrome like you would not believe. Yes. What else? He doesn't have time for us. How in the world can we help him? What else?
He won't remember my name.
Pardon me?
He won't remember my name.
Yeah, I mean, why is he going to give us any time? Well, here's just a few of them we had. He's too busy. He won't help us. He has so much more success than us. We have nothing to offer him. He's somehow going to know we're $600,000 in debt. It's like you feel like you wear it on a sign. These people are $600,000 in debt. Stay away, right? But here's the truth. Limiting beliefs don't equal facts. Limiting beliefs do not equal facts, and we have to remember that. Limiting beliefs are something we will always have to deal with. I've never met one human that didn't have some limiting beliefs. But what you got to do is feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's what we did. So here's the outcomes of that relationship. Thank God we approached him and we asked. Because here's what that relationship has turned into. Number one, he helped us when he helped us figure out how to get our production up. He helped us get interviewed by the number one national real estate trainer in the country, Howard Britton. Yes. And from there, we met so many amazing lifelong friends. Some of them followed us to Keller Williams and are in our profit share tree. Tony and Diana came over eventually. They're in our downline also. We're partners in multiple businesses and multiple houses. We have over a 30-year friendship. And guess what? It's now more of a peer relationship. So imposter syndrome went away, right? And occasionally, he'll even call us and ask us our advice on something. So here's the thing. You have to be bold. You have to have courage. You have to find the who's that have accomplished what your what is that you put on your paper. So real quick, I want to tell you about Chris. I think Chris left with the VIP, but you'll see him around here the next couple of days, and I want you to reach out to him. But we interviewed, Dana and I interviewed Chris Welton last week. He's our last week's podcast, Everything Life in Real Estate, that her and I do together. And Chris, he knows he wants to be a speaker and a coach. And he also made a list of all the people that he wants a relationship with. And one of the people was Dan Martell. How many of you have ever read the book, Buy Back Your Time? Anybody read that? It's a great book. Put it on your list. One of the other guys was John Gordon, who wrote The Energy Bus. Anybody read The Energy Bus? Great book. Put it on your list. And then the guy I don't watch TV that much and whatever, but he does the flip and flop. I can't say his name, but somebody knows who he is. Those are some of the people that he has now gotten in relationship with because they were on his list. And here's how he does it. And this, by the way, is a great book. Pick it up. Read it. I read it in a few hours. And it's called The One Jordan. And what he does is he has the people on his list. He he knows that they like Jordan shoes. He sends them one Jordan with a note that says, "For a 15-minute call, I'll send you the other Jordan." Pretty darn cool, huh? It's so funny because I was getting ready for this talk and we interviewed him last week and I said, "You are going in my talk. You prove my point." So I love that he does that because John Maxwell says, give them a gift so unique that when they look at it, they have to think of you. And this doesn't mean big stuff. What it means is it's important. You know them well enough or you sleuth around enough to know what's important to them. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a gift. It could be an acts of service. It doesn't have to be a gift. So there are many ways to help open a door to a relationship. And we're talking about a few here in these stories. One of them with Tony was we just ask. We found the person who had done what needed to accomplish. We didn't have any validity. Our only validity was we ask. And I'll tell you in a minute, you'll see in a minute why he said yes, more than likely. And our value gap was we needed to make $600,000 as fast as possible. Okay? So there are many ways to open a door. I'm going to give you a QR code at the end that's going to give you all of the 8 that I think are really great ways to open the doors to those kind of relationships. Last story I want to tell you about this is Russell Brunson. How many of you know who Russell Brunson is? He is in the internet world. He is probably one of the biggest in funnels and lead magnets and things like that. So if you're not kind of in that online world, you might not recognize him. But the point is this. When Russell was just starting out, and he wasn't really valid to anybody, there was a guy named Evan Pagan who was big in that world, and he wanted to be in a relationship with him. But the mastermind was so expensive, he couldn't afford to do it. So what Russell did is he went to several of his friends, and he said, "You each give me some money. I'll go join this mastermind, and I'll bring back to you everything I learn." Pretty smart, huh? That's a way he was getting in a room that he didn't qualify for yet. How do you get those doors open in rooms that you don't necessarily qualify yet, but you know you will? My friend Joe says life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. So yes, you're going to open the door to a relationship, but then you're going to quickly just figure out, how do I serve them? What's their value gaps? How can I pour into them? What can I do for them? And the reason this works, we teach this I teach a class on building your profit share, and we teach this in our class, but this has been so powerful to learn. The reason giving to another human works is the thing called reciprocity and beholdenness. When you give to another human, you create this amazing, magical thing called reciprocity and beholdenness. Matter of fact, in Robert Cialdini's book Influence, he says, simply put, people are obliged to give back to others in the form of a behavior, gift, or service that they have received first. See, turns out we're wired that way. So why would they help? Because it turns out we're actually hardwired that way. That's the way God made us. Have you ever noticed? In almost every culture, they say every child knows that when someone gives a gift to you, that you should give something back. It's ingrained in most cultures, right? And I love this one from John Maxwell. When I get a gift, I am grateful. But when I give a gift, I am fulfilled. So Bruce Wilkinson has written several books that I love. One of them is called Dream Giver. If you have any kids, anywhere from probably 6 years old, even I've listened to it in the car on the way to take my daughter to college. It's not too young or too old for almost anybody. He has a book called Dream Giver. And in this book, he talks about a guy that lived in the land of ordinary, but he wanted to be somebody. But he had all these naysayers. And do you think our kids are going to run up against naysayers when they have big dreams and big goals? You bet. So he also wrote the Prayer of Jabez, I think, and it's really good. But there's a story that I could never figure out where I heard it from, and I would always try to tell it, and I was botching it up now, come to find out really badly. But the story is called The Warehouse. And the story goes like this. a man dies and goes to heaven. And when he gets to heaven, he's met by St. Peter. And St. Peter is showing him around. And all of a sudden, there's this huge warehouse. And the man says, wow, what's in that? And every corner they turn, they can still see parts of this warehouse. Finally, St. Peter says, okay, I'll show you. And he goes inside, and inside the warehouse is all of these boxes that are unopened. And the man says, what are in those boxes? And he said, those are all the blessings that God meant for people, but they didn't open the box. And I'm going to tell you, I think there's a lot of blessings in the form of relationships that if you don't have the courage, you're not going to be blessed with those relationships. The blessings are mostly the relationships that we can be having. And so sometimes it's hard for us to want for ourselves. I mean, how many of you sometimes feel like you will do more for your kids to have more than anybody else? Most of us are that way. And so this quote actually came out of Chris Welton's book. So when you read One Jordan, you'll see it. And it's by a coach named Coach Burt. And here's what he said. If you're not reaching your full potential, the likelihood your child of reaching theirs is slim. So if you needed one more motivator today on why you should want a big life, this one might be the one. So I'm going to have you pull out your phones, download this, because it's going to give you the 8 ways that you can start to think about ways to open doors to relationships. And then I'm going to close with one of my most favorite Mark Twain quotes that I love. So scan this. You'll get the 8 ways to open doors. It'll kind of give you some ideas of if you've got somebody on your list, you've got to make the list first, right? Who's accomplished what you put on your paper today that you want to accomplish, right? Who are those people? Make your list. Do like Chris did. Make a big, bold list. Do like we did. Tackle Tony. So I'm going to leave you with my favorite Mark Twain quote that I've actually changed a little bit. He's not here. He'll never know. But it's this. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you did not do than the things that you did. So throw out the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, and dab. Dream, achieve, and become. Thank you. God bless you. I'll be here for the next 2 days. If I can help you, that's what I'm here to do, serve. So thank you.
Linda McKissack.
Fantastic.
Outstanding.